everyone, welcome back to Beyond Nihility. I hope you're all doing good. In this video, I wanted to discuss few details about how to create a mandala, how to get started with it, what are the tools that you would need, and what are those few things that can actually take your mandala to a next level. So before we get into the video, I actually wanted to give some introduction about myself because I don't think I've done it on this channel. So a little bit about myself. I've been doing mandala art and I've been into mandala art since about 7 years. So I used to participate in all these different challenges. I was trying different forms of mandala. I've also done some commissions and I've also created some art for myself for home decor purposes. So based on all the pieces that I've created, I have put together a couple of points which I want to discuss, which can actually take your mandala to a next level. So let's get into the video. Let's try to quickly cover what are the things that you would need before starting the mandala. So first thing you may want to decide is whether you want to create a digital mandala or a traditional mandala on the paper or the canvas. So coming to digital mandala, there are several apps that are available that you can make use of while creating mandala. First one is the Autodesk Sketchbook. It'll be available on the Play Store. It's great for beginners and also it's free. The next app that I would recommend is Procreate, of course. It's really a great app for iPad users and it's really good for detailed work. There are different types of pens that you can use and there are different layering methods that you can use while drawing mandalas to make them more pretty. Although keep in mind that Procreate is a paid app on iPad, so you may want to consider that before you start drawing your mandalas in Procreate. There's also another amazing app for mandalas for iOS, which is Amaziograph. Amaziograph is also a paid app. I have got Amaziograph as well for my iPad. So there are these several advantages that Amaziograph has actually over Procreate, because in Procreate, I think the number of parts you can divide the canvas into is fixed. I think it's about 8 parts. But in Amaziograph, you can actually customize these parts. And if you need those mandala guide for all the finer details that you want to add in your mandala, this can be really helpful. But my personal favorite is Procreate because I'm just comfortable with the tool as of now. But keep in mind that Amaziograph was specifically created in order to bring the symmetry drawing. So there are just various options available in Amaziograph for you to explore. So along with these, there's also this one more app called Sony Sketch. It was originally produced by Sony, but it has been discontinued as of now. So it's no longer available on the Play Store, although there are several APKs available for you to install, but be very, very careful if you're planning to install it because we don't want you to get virus in your device.
Hello, your computer has virus.
So in digital mandala, it's pretty easy to get started with the mandala itself because there are these assisted drawing guidance turned on. So you do not actually need to create a mandala guide in order to start with your mandala. So if you're planning to create a traditional mandala on a sketchbook or a canvas, then I would recommend getting some tools because these will help you create your mandala guide first, which will really help with the symmetry. So you can get basic things like a protractor, which you can use it to divide a circle. You can either buy a 180-degree protractor or a 360-degree one. That's totally left to you. And then you would need a ruler because you would need to draw those guideline markings in your circle after you divide them. And then you would need a compass, of course, to start with the concentric circles. And along with that, if you're planning to create a mandala sketch before you actually draw the patterns, then I would recommend you to get a pencil. Make sure that the sketch is very, very light. So either you can actually go for any pencil that you can use to lay out the sketch very lightly, or if you actually want to buy a lighter pencil, then I would recommend going for 1B or 2B grade pencil so you can lay out your sketch pretty nicely. I'm going to be drawing a guideline which will be fast forwarded in the video because we don't want this video to get too long. Before we do that, we are going to determine the center of the canvas. So the one method that I use while deciding the center of the canvas is just by instinct. I just go like this. I'm not sure if it's exactly at the center, but if you want that precision, you can always go with the diagonal method. You can just connect the two corners of your canvas or your sketchbook and try to intersect both the diagonals after you draw them to determine the center of the canvas. And once you have the center of your canvas, you can go ahead and use your compass to create few circles. So once you're done with drawing all of your circles, you can go ahead and use your protractor to determine the angle. First, I'm going to mark 90 degrees, so that way I can divide the circle into 4 parts. And then I'm going to go for the other angles using these degree markings. And I'm going to be joining all the lines in order to create the mandala guide. So there you go. You have your basic mandala guide now. In order to draw the mandala in the canvas or the sketchbook, I prefer to use fine liners over any markers because fine liners allow you to add those finer details which you may not be able to add otherwise. There are these Pigma Micron pens that I use. Hold on. This is not a sponsored video. Although it would have been nice to get a sponsor for this video.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
So I can influence my 209 subscribers to go buy the product. And I've used them for about 7+ years, I would say. So I'm pretty comfortable with them. And if you ask how I feel about these pens, they are really good for beginners. And as you can see, it comes in a set if you want to buy a set. There are also options available where you can buy basic fine liners as well with the specific width. But I've always got this set because they just contain all the sizes that I need. There's also a brush pen included that can be used for wider patterns. And there's also a pen which is with a very fine needle that you can use to make those finer patterns. For most of my mandala patterns, I tend to use the third pen, which is of 0.35 mm. I'm pretty comfortable with this particular one because it kind of lies in between. It's not too thin and it's not too thick, which is perfect if you want to lay out those patterns at the first before you go into the finer details. Now at this point, if you're going for the traditional art, then you may want to decide what kind of mandala are you trying to draw. Are you trying to draw a mandala wherein you'll be integrating it with other artwork as well? For example, a character art wherein at the background you have the mandala, or mandala being used as an accessory, something like this. So based on what you decide, you can plan your mandala guide and the size of the mandala as well. At this point, you can also decide if you're going for classical black and white mandala or a colored one. You can also create some beautiful watercolor mandalas as well, wherein your background will be of watercolor or even acrylic or even oil paint as well. So that is totally up to you. So those are all the things that you may need to take care of before you begin sketching out the patterns. Coming to making the mandala itself, we have already started with our guide. And the next thing that you may want to take care of is work towards the center of the mandala first, and you can slowly then move outwards. Mandalas naturally expand outwards, so it helps to have a rough mental image on how each layer will evolve. Or if you don't want to follow this one, then you can just totally go with the flow. That also works good. The next thing that you may need to consider probably is sketching out the patterns first if you're not really comfortable in drawing the patterns. If you're very new to mandala or unsure about what pattern to draw, then you can lightly sketch it with a pencil before you actually start drawing. It's always easier to refine your design this way. The next thing probably you would need to take care of is repeating the patterns. Don't be shy to repeat the patterns because mandala is all about a pattern repeating itself and having that nice symmetry. So in digital sketch, it's pretty easy to get the symmetry because you have your assisted drawing guidance turned on. But if you're going for the traditional art, then it's really good to be symmetrical. And also I would say when you're doing a traditional art, it's pretty difficult to achieve the symmetry as well. Small misalignments here and there are totally okay because it happens with everyone. But trying to keep a consistent structure makes a huge difference once your mandala is complete. For digital art, you always have undo and redo. Just undo or redo the patterns until they feel right if you're going for digital mandala. The next thing that I would like to touch on is balancing the light and dark areas. Too much detail sometimes can overwhelm the design and it may not come out nicely. So it's pretty important to maintain a nice balance between the light and the dark areas. For example, I have 3 petals over here. They basically have kind of like the same detail. It's just one big petal and there are several smaller petals inside. But the way they have been laid out is pretty different, as you can see. In the first one, we don't have any white spaces here. The only white space that we have is inside the petal, which looks okay. But when you come to the second one, there are these awkward white spaces that is there between the inner petal and the outer petal. You can see that these gaps, they kind of look little awkward. So when you have patterns like these, it may not look very symmetrical or very nice when your mandala is done. So try to balance the light areas and the dark areas. For example, if I do not want to fill this completely like in the first one, I tried filling the pattern only about this much. And for the remaining one, I used a different pattern. So rather than having these awkward white areas or the dark areas, you can balance it out by filling smaller patterns inside of a bigger pattern. The next thing that I would like to touch on is using shadows and highlights in your mandala, especially for the detailed high impact mandalas, which are like the centerpiece, because that makes your mandala look really alive. Now, if you're going for the traditional one, you can just add a shadow after you're done with each layer, where you can just shade the areas using a pencil. Or if you want to go ahead for that advanced shadow effect, you can also do stippling by placing multiple dots to create that shadow area. If you're going for the digital mandala, you can always add shadows using a soft brush or any brush of your choice. For example, here after every layer, I've just used a soft brush and added a little shadow. This makes your mandala look very alive and it looks like it has got the 3D effect. So that's one thing you can play around with. So the next thing that I wanted to touch on is using the lines with variable width or thickness. Now you can see that in this particular mandala, there are some lines that are thick and there are some finer lines. It helps you maintain that nice contrast in your patterns and it also adds depth to your work. So there you go. Those are all the things that I wanted to discuss about the mandala. I hope you found this video helpful. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel.
Please subscribe
And also consider giving a like to the video. So it will help me in getting motivated to create more tutorials, more art for you guys. And I want to thank you all again for the amazing support that you guys are giving me. So keep supporting me and I hope to create more art on this channel. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.